So this is my Muldrotha the Gravetide deck. It's built around playing playing cards and permanents from your graveyard. So given the fact that it is very permanent themed, there's only two non-permanents in the deck, in Emergent Ultimatum and Nature's Rhythm. Nature's Rhythm wants to be in your graveyard anyway, so it's not a problem if you mill it over instead of a permanent. And Emergent Ultimatum is just such a powerful spell that it's worth it to have in the deck on the off chance that you draw it. So we'll start off with the mana base here. We've got Kishla Village as a green source, which lets you surveil, put cards into your graveyard. And then we've got a couple of forests. We've got some basic islands. And then we've got some basic swamps. We have Opulent Palace as a 3-color source. We've got Demir Aqueduct, Simic Growth Chamber, and Golgari Rot Farm, the 3 different bounce lands that you can play in Sultai. And then we've got a Simic land in Dreamroot Cascade, a couple of Golgari lands in Overgrown Tomb and Wastewood Verge. And then we have a bunch of lands that put themselves into your graveyard so that you can replay them with Muldrotha. We've got Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds as pseudo fetches. We've got Polluted Delta as an actual fetch. And then we've got the pseudo fetches from Streets of New Capenna. Cabretti Courtyard, Maestro's Theater, Broker's Hideout, Obscura Storefront, River Tears Outlook. And then we've got Ash Barrens, so that helps you fix your mana while putting itself into your graveyard. We've got Dust Bowl, which lets you sacrifice another land to destroy your opponent's lands. And then we've got Myriad Landscape and Blighted Woodland, which sacrifice themselves to Rampy. We've got in our artifacts package, because you want to have as many different types of permanents in your graveyard as possible, because you can play one of each type of permanent every turn with Muldrotha. So we've got Milliken, which ramps us, plus it mills cards. So it fills up our graveyard for the Muldrotha shenanigans. We've got Tormod's Crypt Keeper, which lets you exile somebody else's graveyard, and is both a artifact and a creature, so you can choose to play it as either your artifact from the graveyard for a turn or as the creature. Oil Deep Gearhulk, it lets you disrupt your opponent's hand. Again, it is both an artifact and a creature, which gives it a lot of utility. Solemn Simulacrum, classic card. And then we've got Grim Bauble here, which sacrifices itself to surveil 2. Plus, you can use it to kill a small creature of your opponent's when it comes in. There's a lot of removal on permanents due to the nature of Muldrotha recasting permanents. Then we've got a couple of mana rocks in Soul Ring. Commander Sphere, which you can sacrifice it to draw a card and then recast it from the graveyard. Arcane Signet, Traveler's Amulet, and Wayfarer's Bauble, as well as Sultai Monument, which sacrifice themselves to get lands, and then you can recast them from the graveyard. Mind Stone. We've got Nurok Stealth Suit to protect your creatures. The nice thing about it is that it has double blue to equip it at instant speed, so you can move it around. And then we've got a couple of ways to sacrifice your creatures and artifacts with Phantom Train here, and Ashnod's Altar and Phantom Train. And then we've got some enchantments in the deck. We've got Hour of Victory, which makes you a 2/2 black zombie creature token when it comes in, and then when you've reached max speed, you can sacrifice it to search your library for a card, put it into your hand, and shuffle. So it's a tutor that you can constantly reuse with Muldrotha once you've reached max speed. We've got Point the Way, which you can sacrifice it to search your library for X basic land cards, where X is your speed. So it's another enchantment that sacrifices itself, this time for ramp, and you can reuse it multiple times with Muldrotha. We've got Defense of the Heart, which sacrifices itself when your opponent has 3 or more creatures, to grab the 2 best creatures out of your deck and put them into play. And then we've got Summon Titan, which on its first lore counter will mill you 5 cards, and then on the second lore counter will return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. As you saw, a bunch of our lands do like putting themselves in the graveyard, so it's a great form of ramp. And then we've got some enchantment-based removal in Awaken the Honored Dead, which the great thing about the sagas is that they sacrifice themselves after they've hit the 3rd war counter. Seal of Doom, which you can sacrifice it to destroy a non-black creature. Eldest Reborn, which causes your opponents to sacrifice a creature or planeswalker. Side quest Hunt the Mark, which destroys a creature. Summon Anima, which makes your opponents sacrifice a creature of their choice. And then we've got One Ring to Rule Them All, which on the second lore counter destroys all non-legendary creatures. So it's basically a board wipe that we can play over and over again with Muldrotha. And then we've got a couple of planeswalkers, just because you want to have as many different card types as possible, permanent card types. So we've got Vivian on the Hunt, which lets you sacrifice your creatures. We've got Tamio, Collector of Tales, which lets you recur cards from your graveyard. And then we've got Garruk Unleashed. Since we can't really play too many spells, we've got some spells on creatures, essentially, with Disruptive Stormbrood and the Omen. And Meringue River Regent, which has an Omen on it to draw some cards. Loomvine Regent has an Omen to ramp you. Next, we've got a bunch of creatures that kill creatures when they come into play. So we've got Cloud of Darkness, Ravenous Chupacabra, Shriek Maw, which added bonus to Shriek Maw is with its evoke cost, it keeps putting itself back into your graveyard to recast it. And then we've got a couple of cards here that fix your mana while putting themselves in your graveyard so that you can then recast them later in Marborough and belong to Rexor. Then we've got some cards that want to be in your graveyard, like Wonder and Brawn. Brawn gives your creatures trample when it's in your graveyard, and Wonder gives your creatures flying when it's in your graveyard. And then we've got some creatures that want to be in your graveyard in Naga Fleshcrafter and Quarcy Revenant. We've got some creature-based ramp that we can continuously reuse with Muldrotha in Veteran Explorer, Yavimaya Elder, Sakura Tribe Elder, Satyr Wayfinder, and Fertilid. And then we've got a couple of sack outlets in Woe Strider, Kel's Fight Fixer, and Sanguine Spy. We've got Aven Heartstabber that really likes cards in your graveyard. As long as there are 5 or more mana values in your graveyard, he gets +2/+2 and has Death Touch. And plus, when he dies, you get to mill 2 cards and draw a card. So he fills up your graveyard as well. We've got Urg's Bond of Turd, which his power is equal to the number of land cards in your graveyard. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, you can look at the top of your library and put that card into your graveyard. Your graveyard is just as good as your hand in this deck, so being able to put extra cards in your graveyard is great. And then you saw with the mana base, a lot of the lands do end up in the graveyard, so he becomes very big very quickly. Diamond Weapon, costs 1 less to cast for each permanent card in your graveyard, and is a very powerful creature as an 8/8 with reach that prevents all combat damage that would be dealt to him. And then we've got Avenger of the Fallen, which has Mobilize X, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. You're going to fill up your graveyard pretty quickly, so that Mobilize is going to become very big very soon. We've got X Death, who at the beginning of your end step, if there are 6 or more permanent cards in your graveyard, you get to transform him into Neo X Death, which is an X3 Trampler, and his power is equal to the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. So he's very big and trampling. Nice way to get in some lethal damage. We've got Hatchery Spider in the deck, which when you cast it, you can reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard, and put a green permanent card with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield. So it definitely wants a lot of creatures in the graveyard, and this deck does that pretty well. We've got Lunas Cryptozoologist as card advantage, since whenever you play a non-token creature, you're going to get to investigate. We've got Lotus Light Dancers, which lets you put 3 creature cards, a black, a green, and a blue one, into your graveyard, so it works as like a tutor basically. And then we've got Muldrotha for some card advantage, and again with the evoke, it puts itself in the graveyard so that you can keep casting it. Crashing Brontodon kills your opponent's artifacts and enchantments by sacrificing itself, so you get to reuse that over and over again. And then we've got Seed Ship Brood Tender, which for 5 mana you can sacrifice it to put a spacecraft or a creature onto the battlefield from your graveyard, and it mills 3 cards when it enters. There's not any spaceships in the deck, but there is a lot of creatures. We've got Dreamscape Artist, which lets you discard a card, which isn't really a downside in this deck since you get to play stuff from your graveyard, and sacrifice a land, which again isn't that big of a downside because you get to play your lands from the graveyard, to search your library for up to 2 basic land cards and put them into play. So good ramp. We've got Spark Double, which is just a great card. For 4 mana you can copy anything, and it comes in with an additional +1/+1 counter on it if it's a creature, and an additional loyalty counter on it if it's a planeswalker. And then we've got Jumbo Cactuar as a great finisher. It gets plus 9,999 attack whenever it attacks. So great finisher, especially if you can give it trample with Brawn or give it flying with Wonder. And then we're running Vanille, Cheerful Lassie, and Fang, Fearless Lassie, which they both like doing things with your graveyard. So Vanille, when she enters, you get to mill 2 cards and then return a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. And Fang, whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, you get to draw a card and lose a life. And then if you happen to get them both out, you can meld them into Ragnarok, Divine Deliverance, which is a 7/6 Vigilance, Menace, Trample, Reach, Haste. And when it dies, you get to destroy target permanent and return target non-legendary permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So lots of graveyard synergies. I will say this deck does fold to any sort of graveyard hate, but if you can avoid the graveyard hate, it is just so much value that you're going to end up running away with the game. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed my Muldrotha, the Gravetide deck tech. I'll see you guys in the next one, and please remember to like and subscribe. Bye-bye.